Shall we start, Radhika?
Yes, please, we are live.
Indu sir, please.
Yeah. Good evening, friends. Well, we have this gender gap series of the Gender Impact Study Center at Impact and Policy Research Institute in collaboration with Delhi Post News, as well as GenDev Center for Research and Innovation and CityMakers Mission International. So we all have partnered to bring you this series. And today we have something very important to deliberate on and a very important person to also talk. And as you see, in fact, the topic for today's discussion is the heinousness of many Hathras amid the pandemic, voluntarism, the way ahead for combating caste and gender-based violence. And for this, we have, we have Martin Macwan, who is, an eminent Dalit rights activist. About him, I will just tell you that Martin, in fact, as a student, he watched assaults and killings of fellow Dalits, which motivated him to become an activist for Dalit rights. He barely escaped death in 1986 when colleagues were murdered during a land rights campaign. Since suffering this tragedy, Martin, in fact, has fought to bring the killers, a group of feudal darbars, to justice. He founded the Navsarjan Trust in 1989 to promote the rights of Dalits, addressing issues of land rights, minimum wages, and women's rights. He served as the organization's director until 2004, and he has also served as the convener of the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights, NCDHR that we call in short. The US-based Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights presented him its Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award in 2000. In the same year, Human Rights Watch named him one of the year's 5 outstanding human rights defender. So friends, today we have Martin to talk on a crime which I suppose has shaken the conscience of the country. Whether it's shaken the conscience of the country or not, but surely it's shaken all of us. And the grotesqueness in the way, Manisha Valmiki, in fact, the person was raped, killed, and not cremated, but burned by the police, has raised lots of issues. And on top of it, she was a Dalit. Well, I think we'll come back to our comments on later, but we'll open it for Martin to discuss this. Post, we'll have your questions also. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. Very nice to meet all of you during through this program. I'm not getting into details of what happened in Hathras because
Yes.
we all know about it. We have heard about it. We have read it in the papers. The concern that we have before us today is what is the way forward? Now, it's a question which is very difficult to answer because the Dalit situation is not very simple to explain. I would say it's more like an onion which has different layers. You take out one peel and the second one unravels itself. And with close to 200 million people population, speaking so many languages, more than 1,250 subcastes, and look at the levels of differences in terms of literacy. So you'll have best of the educated IS, IFS officers who are Dalits. And then you will have a victim of Hathras who had passed only 5th grade. If you look at the literacy rate of women like Mangs, or in South India, in many subcastes, will be below 2%. This is the reality that we are facing after close to 75 years of Indian independence. So the question is, there are two questions that lie before us definitely. Why, when we say that we have made so much of development, that Dalits are there without much marked difference in their living conditions. One of the fact that is before us is that every year, no matter which party is ruling, the atrocities and the violence on the Dalits is increasing. In spite of having the best legislation in place, we have not been able to contain the violence. And therefore, definitely that leads us to a question, why? One of the things which comes to my mind when I think about the issue is the kind of social campaign that we witnessed in India before independence. The campaign against untouchability, the campaigns promoting widow remarriage, or the campaign against the female infanticide, that is something completely missing post-independence. We don't hear about it. So the only program that we have in independent India is that you have a law in place. If something happens, you have to file a complaint. Now, this is my biggest worry and the point that I'm trying to bring to the focus of this group today is the facts and the figures that we have, sorry, not the fact, the figures that we have do not necessarily reflect and represent the facts which are there in the countryside. The only way for us was to understand what the reality was. The various academic research, independent research that was there in the country, and the sample studies conducted by the government of India on various counts. Now that we are witnessing that there is decreasing levels of research that's happening, on many aspects we don't have the figures. We asked the government how many people died on route while they were migrating in COVID. The figures are not there. Or ask figures of the malnutrition in the country by sex. Those figures will not be available. So without knowing what the facts are, how do we plan? Even the social movements requires a pedagogy and a planning in place to be able to move forward. Now, when I say that the figures do not represent the facts, what I'm trying to say is that if we are saying that there are on average 32,000 rapes happening on the women and about 11% of that on the Dalit women, that does not explain what is the actual levels of violence happening on the countryside on the women. It is not necessary that every single crime that is happening is recorded in the law book. We did a study on the atrocities on Dalits in Gujarat. That was one of our first research when the law came in place, Atrocity Act. And we studied between 1989 and 1993. We took about 11 districts. And the finding was that there was an underrepresentation of 150% of the crimes that were happening which were not recorded. So when a person went to the police station, the police wrote down something on a plain piece of paper giving a sense that an FIR has been registered, but actually it was an application. It never was translated into a complaint. Secondly, that many things do not go to the police station. When I did the book in 2018 called Bhed Bharat, a compilation of about 313 actual stories of discrimination, atrocities, untouchability between 2014 and 18 in India by state, both on tribals and on Dalits. The first thing that we realized that in India today, we do not have a holistic picture of the living conditions of Dalits at one place. The people who live in Gujarat, they have no idea what's happening in Assam or Meghalaya. Or the people who are living back there in Telangana have little information about what's happening in West Bengal. Actually, West Bengal, which has the highest Dalit population, they do not report more than 65 to 85 cases of atrocities every year. Because the moment a person goes to the police station, the only job of the police station is to explain the people not to file a complaint. And West Bengal, in any case, never accepted the fact that there is something called caste. They always claimed that there was something called class. It's very late during the national campaign on Dalit human rights, attempt to take the issue to the World Conference Against Racism, that for the first time I got a letter from Mr. Bardhan saying, today we have passed a resolution in our Politburo that there is caste. Yes. So when you do not accept a reality, how does the mind get even trained to investigate? But I'm coming to a point, if I have some understanding today, it's not because what I studied in my graduation course, but it's because 3 days and 3 nights that I spent with the rural community living in the villages for so many years. If I was not there, I would not have understood. Now I want to tell you that Dalit Shakti Kendra, a vocational school that we have set up in Gujarat, after our campaign on the end of manual scavenging, because we wanted to see that the young people, the second generation, do not fall back to caste-based occupations. So we have trained more than 10,500 young men and women in last 20 years, 57% of them being women. We have a small activity there which is called personal diary writing, which carries an award of 1,000 rupees. It's up to the students whether they want to give a diary to us to read, because only one of us reads and we never reveal what they write there. So I'm not also going to reveal to you what is there in those diaries, but I'm going to tell you what we have learned from those diaries. Almost 75 to 80% of women who have come here to the center, the diaries speak about an experience of sexual violence back in their villages. I asked a question one day to the students on some topic. Has anybody thought of committing suicide? 56 people of the 65 people who were present in the room, they raised the finger in a second, saying yes, they have thought of committing suicide. None of our academic research captures the impact of the caste and the gender prejudices that's happening on the minds of the young population. We don't investigate, therefore, the social implications or the social reasons why the suicide rate has doubled in the country in the last 10 years. Now, we came to know from the diaries that most of the young women, they have been sexually assaulted when they have gone for open defecation. Those people are hiding there. We came across a case, a fact, a story of a woman in Uttar Pradesh. She had not gone for defecation for more than a month for fear of being sexually exploited. She was defecating in her one-room house on a piece of paper, and the husband used to go and throw it out. It's only when the story broke out in a local newspaper that the government wrote a letter to her that if you apply, we will sanction one toilet for you. So what's happening there? There are several thousands of women who go for that sexual exploitation experiences in the villages because they're not recorded as a crime. It is not recognized. So what Hathras tells us, earlier the crimes happened in the darkness, in the unknown places, but now the character has changed. It is happening in the daylight, often in the presence of the police, without fear of law. And therefore, the second point, what I'm driving at is the special legislation that we got called Atrocity Act. Its objective was to prevent the crimes, much less to offer remedies after the crimes have been committed. What have been the programs by the state taking place, like the campaign that we have right now on the COVID? Every time you want to call up someone, there's a long message telling you that you have to wear the mask. Have we heard a single message on that we should not practice untouchability, or we should not commit crime against women, or we must respect women? How much our curriculum in our primary education or our middle schools or even college education focus on this topic? So we think that by putting a law in place, everything is okay, it will be taken care of. The second frustration which Hathras brought out, the role of the state. A person at the rank of the Deputy Inspector General of Police does not know the definition of rape. And a district magistrate, hell-bent on proving that there is no rape, while the girl has been murdered and she has been cremated without giving the body to the family. It was very distressing. What the family wanted was, the last wish was to only apply haldi turmeric paste on the body of the deceased, because that is the cultural tradition across religions. But as if Dalits do not have last wish. But the point that what disturbs me most is the complete silence on the part of the elected representatives of the Dalits. We have about 591 members of legislative assemblies across the country who are Dalits, and 94 members of the parliament who are Dalits. I'm not counting the member of parliament who are sitting in the Rajya Sabha. They do not speak about it. Now that takes us to the debate back on the Pune Pact between Gandhi and Ambedkar. Why Dr. Ambedkar did not want political reservations. and why he insisted so much on what he called the separate electorate. So you have a powerful Dalit representation in terms of numbers, but it's completely of no use. On the contrary, you saw some of the Dalit leaders on the television defending the state of Uttar Pradesh in favor of the accused and not the victim. I think in one of the way forward, I strongly advocate we must close down political reservation at least for 10 years and to see what impact it is bringing about. Right now, there is extending of political reservation without any debate in the country. Gandhi insisted to have political reservations only for 5 years. Ambedkar said 10 years, but that was only political reservations. Why? It was written there, it was discussed in the parliament, in the Constituent Assembly, that in 10 years of time, we would achieve enough equality in society that political reservation would become irrelevant. Why after 75 years today, without any debate, whether what impact it has been able to bring on the lives of the Dalits, we are continuing with it. It has become more like a personal benefit. We heard one of the young leaders, and he says, open my heart, and you will see a person, not Ambedkar, certainly not Ambedkar. We are caught in a tremendous catch 36 situation where the first person in the country is a Dalit, the President of India, and the last person in Hathras is also a Dalit, and that is where the caste is at its full play, revealing all its contradictions. Maybe my last 2 points. The government right now is very systematically moving to curtail the space of the civil society, especially voluntary organizations, pushing the argument forward the misuse of the FCRA. There may be some truth because every system has an element of misuse. You'll have people sitting in Delhi maybe who will draw a salary of several 100,000 rupees per annum. But you look at Dalit Foundation, you look at Navsarjan, you look at Dalit Shakti Kendra, the volunteers, the field activists who are working there in the villages, they draw maybe 8,000, 10,000 rupees. But without that cadre of people, there is no way you can connect the poor to the government programs of welfare. Or there is no other system to inform the people at the grassroots what is law, what is right. Because when we took this program of putting the Haldi Tilak on the representational picture of the Hathras victim, we came to know that most rural community, especially women, had no idea of what happened in Hathras at all. Something happened. They had no idea. We had to tell them the story of what happened. That's the fact after 75 years Indian independence. A point which is very depressing, that in democracy, the value of protest has a very dominant or very critical space. If there were no protest, the impact that we see on the case of Hathras would not be there. It happened because there was a civil society protest. The state would not have been able to do it on their own. They would not do it in the first place. But now what the state does is, there is criminalization of the protest happening. The only thing that the government can do, what the state has to do in a democratic setup, to make citizenship possible. I mean, we have the whole idea of the nationalism with us, which essentially says that every citizen has to be proud of the nation. That pride cannot come unless you are an equal citizen in the first place. And that equality is not possible unless because it is protest which is bringing out the facts. And when you criminalize the protest, what you are trying essentially to say that as a state, you have a mandate to make the inequality a status quo. You want to protect it. Well, we have one after another, more than half a dozen of people in the jail, some more than 2 years, on the Bhima Goregaon. But the people against whom the FIR was registered, no action has taken place. So what I'm saying now, maybe as a closing remark, that the only alternative probably that is with us, what I call the voluntarism. We have to motivate the youth either through our academic institutions or through centers like Dalit Kendra, which does. We spend 50% of our time when they're here for 2 months residential program on vocational education. But equal amount of time given to what we call the leadership skills or the life skills. Asking them to go back to the community and help people in need. Because in 75 years of our democratic life, we have come to realize very painfully that as a state, we have failed to bring social reforms. We have failed to tackle the prejudices of caste and gender. I think I would end there.
Thank Indu, sir. Yes. Sir, please unmute. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you, Martin, for that passionate and a sad commentary also on what the Dalits have been facing in the country. And I suppose the points that raised are all valid points. And you see, a reason, you see a way out to voluntarism by motivating the youth as such. Well, I'll open it, in fact, before I open for discussion, we have Govind Kelkaji with us. I want her to just raise certain issues and all, and then I think I'll have Simi and Arjun, and then we open up for discussion. So Govindji, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. I mean, it was very candid, passionate and dispassionate analytical statement that you made historically and bringing it to present situation. However, I would talk from the gender point of view, and I see the nexus between caste and gender. Okay. And particularly when I talk of gender, then I talk of really feminist issues. I'm not talking of the gender mainstreaming that has been abused and used in a very different way. We are familiar and we can raise those kind of issues. So when we define patriarchy, we always call it Brahmanical patriarchy. So that means pollution, treatment of women in certain ways, and in scriptures they have been they have been equated, they have been called Shudras and women, okay, together. So this is the culture that comes, and we can so whole nature of patriarchy, that point I wanted to make, is really Brahmanical, and that attacks both the caste, the Dalits, and and women, and creates a very hierarchical society. That is the and that is very kind of it, and it has perpetuated. This is what, and I am not surprised, because it is perpetuated and made stronger, and there has been increasing attacks on women, because there is a kind of line, you can see the underlying undercurrent of this in various programs that is being drawn in the name of the modernity. Situation has become much more complicated. We are also kind of surprised at the continuing rapes have become gang rapes. Now these gang rapes have turned into murders and gang rapes, very brutal kind of things. So this kind of brutalized form of mutilation of the bodies and elimination of the bodies, including the feticide, I mean, that starts India, it has started since 1991, but it is coming in the worst form now. So that is the story of the growth. I'm not a degrowth person, but I'm question of this is the model of the neoclassical economics. That is one economic growth. That is one thing that we need to question. Second is really there is general insensitivity. And I'm so glad now Dalit women and Dalit feminism, Dalit women and young men, Dalit feminism is coming for the first time. I mean, that is the kind of, they are raising their questions. I'm in close touch with the Tamil Nadu Women's Forum, Fatwa Barnan and others. You would see that we are together in many forums. So there is a general insensitivity, as they report, and as I see, about women, even among the Dalit men, that they were noted. So I think Dalit men also, progressive men also has to really come out on the two issues. I'm not opposing you. Don't think that I'm saying that kind of thing. This is my understanding. They have to take up the question of caste, and they have to take up the question of women's rights within that group. It is not only Dalit women who are attacked, but Dalit women are attacked much more than the general caste women would be attacked, because by and large in the cultural system, they are both Shudras and both would be attacked. But Dalit women would be further attacked, because there is a kind of double oppression and double exploitation and double untouchability about them, and double controlling. They are controlled in the household, which is considered the nurturing household. So this situation is very complex. Now the question comes that why the Dalit women's voice in particular has been muted by the state and by the other agencies. Because even some of the progressive NGOs, prior to this kind of heinous, these crimes that have come up in recent years, they did not really take up the issues. It was considered among the NGOs and various other groups that if we take up the question of Dalit community, the whole community would be empowered or would be liberated kind of thing. And of course, Ambedkar saw it differently. He did not kind of see that way. But a lot of NGOs, and particularly dominated by the general caste groups, had this kind of point that don't divide the kind of issues. You are talking of women's rights, I am talking of Dalit rights, but the two rights go together. That is the kind of, that is what my understanding is. Two other points I would say, and then I would keep quiet, that if there was no kind of reservation, I would not really see as many Dalit men and as many Dalit women coming up. It was so oppressive system in my way that they would not be allowed to come. I come from a village where a Bhangi, a boy, was charged for dacoity, and when I asked that why he was he really involved in the dacoits, and then the people, the Thakurs told me No, but he got the name of Rakesh. And Rakesh is your brother. His name is Rakesh. I was so surprised that a Bhangi boy cannot call him the name of the Rakesh. He has to be called Ghasite and this and that. This is how the system, how oppressive it was. That is the change has been there, and there are more attacks in that. But this change, we have to push to this change. That would be the struggle. Inequality of women and social groups have perpetuated and have become deepened and widened in various forms, and it's a multifarious kind of situations, and that is one thing that we need to understand. To me, human rights, to me, the way forward is really human rights for every woman and man. Now we can't say for everyone. I don't want the communities that are composed only of men and not of women, that is the head of the household. I have a strong critique of these things. I talk of the kind of every individual has the human right. Dalit, woman, man, no matter of what caste. Let us assert our rights. And this assertion of the rights will not come on the platter. It will come really as a part of collective struggle, collective protest, and pressure to have the policies being implemented. This is my framework that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Govindji. If we have Simi and Arjun to contribute, and then we open up our discussion. I mean, the questions that have come, you can also pose it to Martin for him to address it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, Indu sir, Martin sir, and Govind ma'am. The entire talk and conversation is so chilling, and we need to discuss more and more and draw the attention of everybody starting from the civil society, from the last person to of course the head of the state. So you mentioned, I mean, I don't have any question per se, but I have a few comments to make, which supplements your talk. When you mentioned that the police do not file complaints or they do not lodge the FIRs, this is very, very true. You know, very recent and candid discussion with a law enforcement officer in the recent past revealed three things. You know, they cannot take up more cases of rape and violence against women, as their records would show to the authorities and to the public that there has been an increase in the crime and violence against women in that particular Thana area. And this is certainly not a welcome sign for them. Second was, when they take a proactive stance to ensure justice to the survivor, they are faced with tremendous pressures from the local gundas and also from the higher ups, mostly having political connections or even connections in the police. Often connected, they are often connected with the accused, so they tend to they are tended towards being discouraged in taking a proactive stance. And third was, even after the survivors are ensured of justice, they are ensured that you will not be called to the police station, you can rest assured that your identity would be protected and everything, but still they backtrack, you know, from lodging an official complaint. They are quite fearful of what is going to happen to them, to their families, and then everything again comes back to the scratch, to ground zero. So this is the sad state of affairs, and this is across all castes. But of course, as you have rightly pointed out, that the majority of the violence against women is against Dalit women. Yes.
Martin, sir, would you like to comment on them, or I should add few more? There have few questions have come.
If you have any other questions, then
yes, let me okay, and then Indu sir can also add few things. Okay, sir has really, or let me just read out some of the questions which we have got. Kantilal Parmarji have sent a very a generic question: how can we reduce caste-based violence in India? Why caste-based violence is continuing in India and still in 21st century? Then we have Bhavya, research scholar from CRED Chandigarh. The protests have not resulted in any strict action. What can be done in this atmosphere where even the fourth pillar is only discussing on entertainment? The nationwide ignorance is very disturbing, Bhavya. And let me thank you, Martin sir, for coming here and spending time and reflecting on such a important deliberation. Last time also, Martin sir came and we really discussed on Black Lives Matters and George Floyd. That time also in US, we discussed the same thing, the role of state and especially the police, what happened that time. And there also we had a good discussion that how police or this thing can be done. Sir has really highlighted one very important fact that this Dalit girl from Hathras was only 5th grade pass. That was the education level. So the sort of gender inequities which is coming up through this caste and gender axis is really something we should really focus on. And sir also highlighted that what women are feeling, especially from Dalit community, with all the notes and everything sir has really mentioned. Three things I really wanted for sir to reflect upon. I was a student, PhD student of Professor Thorat and involved in IIDS, Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. In my understanding as a student, two very prominent things which come out for this prejudices or I'd say discrimination. One is of course the economic part, and the other is purity. We have had the Swachh Bharat mission. Sir really mentioned that going for open defecation, and that then also this is happening, and all the purity. Our chairperson Kelkar ma'am also touched upon this aspect. Uska naam bhi Rakesh tha, to naam kaise ho gaya? This purity dimension, and in this 21st century, how can we really see? Two questions which really sir has focused. One was on political reservation, which sir is highlighting. In fact, some of our work we were also looking into the segregated settlements for different caste. Other thing Baba Saheb Ambedkar has also told. So what impact do you see, or sir, what in your understanding you're suggesting when you're saying that let us stop this and go to other way with the Gandhi Ambedkar debate, and what will be the impact? And similarly, sir, do you see the Atrocities Act which we have is now not doesn't have teeth now? A decade ago, there was also news that people are misusing it, overusing it. But now is this becoming weak over time? Do we need to revisit again on these aspects? And lastly, sir, do you think that our cities and villages have some different sort of levers or tools or actions to combat this kind of caste and gender-based violence? Sir, over to you. You can choose to reflect upon anything, and then Indu sir can also add few things. Indu sir, if you want to. But yes, Martin sir, why don't you? Yes, go on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for all those comments. Let me clarify. Number one is that when I mentioned the reservations, I specifically mentioned about the political reservations. While the economic and the educational reservation have made a tremendous impact, the political reservations have not made an impact. And so that's what I wanted to just make it very clear. I think let me start with the comment on the Atrocity Act per se. The problem is the mind which investigates offenses. We saw in Hathras that it must be very embarrassing for the High Court to ask a Deputy Inspector General of Police whether have you read the definition of the rape. So it is with this mindset that you investigate an offense where you believe that this is not a right case, these are false cases. Then ultimately you will produce an investigation which will not add into convictions. So you have a law, but if you do not have a mind, the same thing I think is happening in the US when we spoke about the Black Lives Matter. It is the prejudices of the race which makes the law ineffective. And therefore, definitely, therefore, there is a lot of merit in the argument that there has to be reservation even in higher judiciary. Yeah? Because there is a deep problem. What we saw when the Supreme Court gave their remarks and orders that they passed on the Atrocity Act. Yeah? How can a Supreme Court have two kind of opinion which can be absolutely contradictory to one another, right? And this is where we don't accept it. It's very are not willing to discuss it openly. But one area which we have not put it to test is the judiciary. So because as I said, this is like an onion layer. Yes, just by having the law, the things are not logically it's not ending. There's another layer to it. I think what Dr. Govind made a comment was very important of the culture. Yes. And here I feel that, recently we have something going on in Madhya Pradesh where one of the Congress ex-chief minister called a Dalit woman an item. Yes. And the BJP also said something. This is the culture, right? So the definition of development does not involve language, customs, traditions, and what kind of work should be done there through education. One of the issue I feel very strongly about it, that the answer that Buddhism can give, or the teaching of Buddha in the present time, which we do not get from the traditional wisdom that we have presented to us as the ideal system in life. Because Buddha dealt with the whole question of women at that time, whether the women should not be allowed or not allowed in the sanghas. And he took a position finally to be allowed. But you're right, these are not debated, addressed into our education system. But I do have a comment to make is that the feminism movement in India is not so dedicated to including the whole question of caste reality into the feminism movement of India. I have the greatest regard, and I have done a lot of training programs. I have the best of the friends there. I'm also a member of a board like Jagori and other things. But the fact remains, yeah, and that is a perception asked even the Dalit women rights activists, and they'll say, has given a question of caste. But I fully take the situation of the Dalit women is the most precarious. Yes. What they go through within the families also is horrible. The second thing I would like to bring it here is one of the major challenges that we face is the division of the Dalits on the basis of caste, which is not bringing about what a Dalit identity. Without homogeneity, there is very little you can do to promote organization of the masses. You don't need homogeneity. These are subcaste realities which actually reinforce the caste system. And that definitely we have been addressing in our work for so many years. I think point, I would say that we have to take seriously the whole question of unemployment within the Dalit youth, and how creatively we can combine the employment with like the DSK model, where we train people so that they can earn their own livelihood, and yet they become the community leaders. Well, there was a question, but from someone that the protests have not, have not led to some actions. I fully agree, because the protest has not become the widespread. If you do not have cadres of voluntary activists spread to every single village in India, we think that social media is something very powerful, and within a split of a second, it reaches from home to home. That's not true. That's a myth. The community needs someone to sit with them and talk to them over something. So this is a great challenge, and I think as a way forward, I strongly advocate a very strong advocate of the activists, grassroots activists, volunteers, who sit with the people and bring them into the forum, so that the protest actually become very widespread, and therefore it can make impact. I think I would end there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I just want to come in here, Martin, with all your answers as such. I think the point that you also brought in was very important, that the first person of the country
Indu, sir,
and the last person of the country,
yes, sir.
yeah, and the last person of the country are actually united in the sense that they are both Dalits. So and also one point which you mentioned about the FCR and all, I personally feel that when it comes to government getting certain legislative stuff and all, they pass the 3 farmer bills. They got the FCRA within a day's time as such, But when it comes to taking action on some of the issues of Dalit rights and Dalit, what happened to Hathras, they went about burning the body. It was not cremation. They burned the body, very period. And the issue really is, why shouldn't the chief minister of the state be holder for that? Because all this would not be possible without the CM's order. So somewhere also the issue really is, don't we have NHRC and Supreme Court and High Courts and SC Commission, okay, to take action on this? Where are the normal institutions of the country today? One time they were all were powerful, they used to raise issues and all, and today they all have just gone silent. Then there's also the issue of intersectionality, where we talk about all oppression is interconnected. Whether it's Dalit, it's women, it's disabled, you take it further. So intersectionality adds more to the oppression. So with Dalit, with women, with these issues of being educated, I think all that actually has made things worse for the Dalits in the country, and especially for the women. So in the way forward, how do you see maybe some of the institutions which have collapsed? Is there any promise of making the institutions more solid, more stronger? And what, as per you, maybe one of the way outs? Because actually, many of us are furious with what's happening there and what's happened, in fact. And there are people who are angry with what is going on in the country today. So we would want to have some opinions of yours on this also, Martin. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question, but that's the problem, that the commissions, whether it's NHRC or SCSC commission, also they have been colored politically, and therefore, if there's a rape happening at one place because I'm in opposition, that becomes an issue for me. When it happens in a state where I am the ruler, then I'll say it's a sub judice kind of thing. And therefore, that's what I was said, and what Ambedkar said is that if you really want to measure what development the country has been able to achieve, the good question would be how much progress the women have made. So equality has not become the critical value of India in the democracy. Right? We cannot say that, well, we have made law and therefore everything is okay now. That's an incorrect. And therefore, I think as civil society, we have to take aggressively on the central value of equality, which is non-negotiable. I think it is these things which, to my opinion, that will add life to the whole social movement.
Sure, definitely. Any questions, Arjun? If you can see in the chat in question answers.
So we have more
there are
questions,
two,
but I think
there are two questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sir, if you could.
Yeah, please.
There are just two more questions.
Yeah,
there are two more questions. If sir could just briefly talk about it. One is from Smita Kumar. She teaches at a university and researches on intimate partner violence. And her question is, how do we make the city-grown children or the youth aware of the caste and gender-based violence in the rural and semi-rural context? So basically, how to sensitize them of the whole challenge. And how the second question is, how can women take the lead and start the process of deconstruction about caste in a patriarchal society like India? This is a question by Erika Anaya. So
let me also add something. Martin sir really said last time that, and also reflected for us when we were asking that during this corona pandemic, these things are happening. How should we go ahead? Sir really reminded us that 50, 70 years before, that was so tough. And sir, now it is getting so much, aggressive. The situation, not really Hathras. That is why we also chose the topic. Many Hathras in Delhi, everywhere, sir, it is happening. Let us forget physical distancing and all other things. People are really getting desperate. What the situation is. So, sir, what do you think in 6 months, 1 year, people can come together and raise what all important points? Yes.
Okay, I think very good questions, but very practical questions. In our school days, I mean, even if you're in an urban area, definitely the schools created conditions where the children from different localities came together. And our MSW colleges, Master of Social Work colleges, definitely had a program of the what they call the placements. Unfortunately, there is a decline. And the decline is that I sometimes go and speak to the social work schools. Almost 98, 99% of their graduates, they join the corporate world and hardly anyone back to the social movements for the objective for which those schools had started in the first place. But I have faith in the education to be able to change the mindsets of the people. So I think we have to give a lot of attention on creating of the literature and the books. We started a movement in Gujarat where, and today even now we have, every village we work in Dalit Foundation, we set up a small library for the children of the chosen books. Because the prejudices that we talk about it, whether it is gender or caste, it is interwoven in the literature. And therefore, if you want to attack those prejudices, then you have to give something in the form of the books for the children. I mean, we even produce toys for children, educational toys, by which they can look at the prejudices that's happening there. Earlier, we used the whole question of drama, theater, to bring children together. For example, in Gujarat, we promoted the whole children's theater called Chote Bheem Natak Harifai. We used to put a book in competition, and the village children formed teams. And we got artists from Bombay who came and taught children how to act. And at one time, we had more than 250 theater teams from children performing on that book. And then we had a condition that if those teams were formed of the intercaste, or more than one caste, then they would get 10% grace marks. And you saw that the OBC children, the tribal children, the Muslim children, yeah, the Dalit acted a Muslim and the Muslim acted like a Brahmin. Along with the fun, the children really intermingle. I think if we focus even 30% of our energy of the protest in doing constructive work of education with the children, the prejudices are likely to lessen, because these children of today, in 10 years from now, they are going to become the young people. And I think you also made, Dr. Smita made also another good question, is the how the women can deconstruct the whole caste is very important. And to me, the whole value is therefore to become independent, right? It is the independence which brings the dignity. What the caste guarantees is you be very, very respectful to everyone, and will ensure security of your food. No, that I have to become independent. I can take care of myself. This is what like Dalit Shakti Kendra does. We have trained more than 7,000 women who today they have opened their own shops. They're earning 15,000 rupees per month. I see mother-in-laws coming with lunch boxes for them in the daytime, because now she's earning. So economic activities is very important. Just creating awareness about rights is not sufficient. We have to create avenues where women can become financially independent. We insist on the young women who come to our center to have their own bank accounts. We insist that every woman who come from a farming family make sure that their names appear in the books of records as owners of the land, which nobody told them ever, not even their parents told them. So I think, but the fact is that ultimately to be able to do all that, we need people, we need educators. We have social media, but we have to use social media for that. Well, I think I would just, add with those comments. I hope they're helpful.
Thank you. I think we can, Simi can officially give a vote of thanks. I really want to share with Martin sir and also with Indu sir. I visited for research purposes one of this migrant camps, and there I really witnessed a guy from Bihar. He was a pandit, and he was said that how come this guy being Kshatriya is telling to marry a Brahmin girl from their family. So even when there is nothing to eat, you are in a migration camp in COVID, and still those are the feelings here in the New Delhi, in the sir. So our cities, and rightly the question was asked, and another question Erika Lisbeth Vega Ananya asked. So sir, this is the reality amidst the COVID we are living. I would once again thank you, Martin sir, Indu sir, and also Govind ma'am to come here and share these very important thoughts. And we will share all the video on all our social media. Simi, why don't you go ahead and can give a vote of thanks?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Arjun. It is always a pleasure, sir, Mr. Martin Macwan, to listen to you and your passionate arguments, and the hope that you bring, and the optimism that you bring despite the challenges that we are all faced with. It is very, very encouraging and motivating and inspiring. So I take this opportunity on behalf of the Gender Impact Studies Center at IMPRI, GenDev Center for Research and Innovation, Delhi Post News, and CityMakers Mission International. I thank you. I thank you for joining us this evening and for being so generous with your time, and the audience for posing questions and for being so supportive and watching us here on Zoom and also on Facebook Live. Thank you very much, sir. We look forward to having you again in future discussions. Thank you, sir.
I would really like to mention Counterview and Rajiv Shah sir also. Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Indu sir, do you have some parting words?
Yes,
If
yes.
you,
Sir, your mic is again.
mic is muted.
Yeah, I just want to say that Martin, I think what he spoke about, I think was so important. And this is a fight for justice. And we all of us here, and all the viewers, participants are committed to this fight for justice. And I think in our lifetimes, we should be working towards it and trying to get justice. More power to you, more strength to you. And we are together in this struggle. Zindabad. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Jai Bhim.
Good evening. Have a good day. Have a good evening, sir.